Produced by Podcast Architects.
Welcome to another edition of The Path Forward. My name is Rick Fernandez. I'll be your host, where we talk about innovation and education and have a little fun along the way. And we are on location in sunny San Marcos ISD, Consolidated ISD, and at a beautiful facility here, which brings me to my guest, the superintendent, Dr. Michael Cardona. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I've got to ask you, I know you're an Aggie, and as it pains me to do this because I've married in, I'm not an Aggie, right? So
that's all right.
Would you like to say anything about the game?
It's a great win, but if you do it 5 years in a row, it's different than once every decade. So, it was a good night.
I didn't even get to see the game. So once Alabama took the lead, I went, my 3-year-old, taking him to bed. So I was like, oh, it's over, right? So I go to bed, and then about 3 in the morning, I woke up and said, just check the phone. And sure enough, they won. So I went back out and DVR'd, rewound, to see how it all happened. So it was an awesome game. And I saw everybody rush the field. If you're there, do you rush the field? And you're close enough to go, do you rush the field?
I do not. I went to A&M in a different time. And so part of that, I think we just expected to win. I think when I was at A&M, we didn't lose a conference game. So there was never a need to rush the field. So I'm happy for the fans that rush the field, but that's not something that I would do. Again, if we do it 5 years in a row, then it becomes a standard. But, we just had a good night and everything came together, and they played, I think, like the coaches trained them to play, and they believed in the system, and no need to rush the field. It's just a game.
Well, I wouldn't rush the field either, but it's kind of for a different reason, because with my luck, I'd get out there and tear an Achilles. Mm-hmm. And I'd be the one that gets arrested because the officers that, they don't want to deal with the college kids. So I'm sitting there laying on the ground. They have to get a stretcher to pull me out there. So it was $100,000 fine for rushing the field.
Jimbo can pay that.
I was about to say, one of the boosters probably picked that cost up. I would like to think.
Jimbo can just write a check for it.
So talk to me about what's going on in San Marcos Consolidated ISD. Give me some of the scoop.
Some growth. You can see behind us, we've got a lot of growth, and just pushing forward. You've got great teachers doing great things with kids. It's good to have the kids back in the building. We still have our safety protocols that we all know worked last year. And so I think, if there's a move, it's more to understanding the stories that our kids have been through for the last 18 months. And I think we're not so much concerned about accountability as we are about stabilizing kids and getting them back in the system, and then now building on some type of program that looks at their needs and then going from there.
You think that the focus on social emotional health and well-being is magnified because of COVID? I mean, what are the things that you're seeing from your kids that maybe haven't been there before?
I think from both spectrums, I think staff and kids, you can see kids at younger ages who've not ever been in school have some struggles in terms of self-control and time management, managing themselves. And we've really been working hard. Now, we're fortunate here in this district that we had social emotional counselors prior to COVID, working with communities and schools. I think we had jumped on that before, but they're being used right now. And so from the staff perspective, I think, we do some teacher self-care and some groups. Our counselors run some adult groups, and you can see the stress.
Sure.
I think everybody recognizes kids need to be in the building, but our teachers have their own stories, and our custodians and child nutrition workers also.
What is some of the positives? Obviously we've had a lot of struggles with COVID, but give me some bright spots or some unintended positive changes that have happened because of it.
I'll go back to, I think the biggest positive is it's really forced teachers to look at the kid and understand where they were at, and not so much focus on accountability. I think, teachers intuitively always want to do what's best for kids, but I think it's easy to always just kind of go along and fall into this sense of normalcy that we in education have been doing for the past,
Sure.
umpteen years. But I think if there is a positive from the pandemic, it's okay to disrupt the system, and it's okay to know where the kids are at and not focus on an end goal of getting them ready for a one-day test.
In terms of accountability, what would you like to see happen with that? You mentioned maybe some localized accountability. If we were in front of the commissioner and saying, hey, this is the recommendation, and I know you like to speak your mind, so do I need to give the disclaimer that the views of this show may not necessarily agree with the host or the guest or whatever that disclaimer is?
They are my own opinions.
Yeah, there you go.
They are my own opinions.
I've seen some tweets, you got some opinions about accountability, but I think they're valid. What would you like to share about?
Well, I mean, I think this 18-month has really shown that it's the poor kid that suffers.
Yeah.
I mean, the gaps that are there, they don't have access to, what more affluent kids have access to. And I think when you simply rely on a test that on one day to measure, what a kid can or can't do, I think it's misguided policy. I went to private school, K-12, and never had a test in front of me my test was the SAT and the Iowa test of basic skills. And that's what I took. I never had to have a conversation with a teacher or an administrator that said I wasn't good enough on this day and that we need to talk about that. As an expectation, teachers took care of me. We read, we did a lot of writing, and we did math, and that was it. And I think this 18 months has shown us anything, it's maybe we need to go back to a little bit of old school and enough with the testing and lining people's pockets for the benefit of corporations and not kids.
You bring up an interesting point about what it used to look like. It was more about the learning experience in the classroom. And even if the technology wasn't there in our day, right? But it was more about, hey, this makes sense for kids. And there wasn't those high stakes standards that the teachers are under the pressure, the district are, the parents are pressured to achieve. So I'm interested to see how that evolves and what the legislature and ultimately the commissioner and school districts do with that. I think you bring up some great points that we need to look at what's really in the best interest of our kids and their learning, and not to mention our teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you guys, but our absenteeism with just our staff, right, with just health and relative health and all those things, that takes a toll because then learning's not occurring and you can't find substitutes in this day and age because of all the things that are going on. What about career and technology? It seems that this pandemic has really, evolved the speed at which our kids need to be able to learn, right? Because now a lot of the companies are virtual and people work from home and it's nothing to hop on a Zoom and do your job or check in with the team. What changes might you see for career and tech kids, or really all kids that are coming to the high school?
Well, I think there's a time and place for technology, even with career technology students who are in that traditional pathway, right? They had to adapt their practices and they had to do some things on technology that allowed them to keep earning their hours. So the businesses adapted, as kind of we were alluding to. But I mean, construction continued, highway construction continued. I mean, there has been a renewed sense that kids, can make a lot of money.
Yes.
Being a welder or an electrician. And so I think that shift is going back. I think some of your legislators are like, oh, maybe we should have multiple pathways. And we've been saying that, since No Child Left Behind,
right?
Which was a great, a policy that was, intended to help, but I think it hurt a lot of kids. And so I think businesses now they're having to adapt, how they assess and get people certified. And yeah, there is a move, 30 miles away from here, Tesla's moving their headquarters. Yep. And we've met with Austin Community College about doing some kind of advanced manufacturing pathway because it's coming down here. They're going to be looking for workforce. And
Absolutely.
So they were visiting our facility a couple of weeks ago and we're like, hey, this would be a good opportunity. And so I just think it's again, moving away from this 1-day test, which I hope takes root, and to just doing what's best for kids in the pathway they want. And career technology is, a lucrative area right now, and there's a need for it. And our teachers have adjusted really well. Businesses are adjusting, but politicians listen to business people. They don't listen to teachers.
Absolutely.
So hopefully that continues, and those business, the Elon Musk of the world, put enough pressure to say, like, hey, we need to move away from this
Right.
crazy system.
Ultimately, what matters when kids are going to look for work or their careers, or really what they're passionate about? Is it a test, or is it, hey, this is the job that I want to do and I have the skills to do it, right? You said an SAT. Do you want to share your score?
Do I want to share my
Your
score?
SAT score? You said you're the first
It
accountability.
was above the national average by plus or minus 300 points.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It was good enough to get in school, right?
Well, at the time, the national average was roughly about 900, so plus or minus 300 points.
What would yeah. What would you do different if you could go back in your K-12 experience? Is there anything that you would take or want to explore now that you know what you know?
I would have asked my parents to send me to public school.
Really?
Yes.
And tell me about that. Why?
I think I missed out on a lot. I think they made choices for me that they needed to make. My brother is a graduate of public school, and I am not. And there's a reason for that, economic reason that they had to make. He didn't want to go to college, and so he went military.
Mm-hmm.
And so they made the decision to send me to private school, which would, like I said, that's what they needed to do for me. But I think I missed out on, I played sports, but I think I missed out on career technology, missed out on fine arts, a robust fine arts program. And, I would have liked to have learned how to play the guitar, or maybe played a musical instrument. That just wasn't my path. So yeah, that's really the only thing. I think it would have helped me prepare my first semester at A&M a little bit better, because life choices, your first semester, I was completely overwhelmed, being in a science class. Feldenfels had 800 kids in, one classroom.
Oh, wow.
My graduating class was 23. So it was
a little bit of culture shock there for you?
Yeah, it was a lot of distractions, a lot of places to hide,
Sure.
in the classroom, people to hide behind. And, there are GPA consequences for that.
I won't ask you, since I asked you about your SAT, I'll leave the GPA.
No, you can ask me. I just looked it up the other day. I was actually shocked.
Well, go ahead then, if you're going to throw it out there.
I tell this story. I graduated from A&M with a 2.33 undergraduate. And so I just finished my doctorate at A&M. And so they sent me my final transcript, and I looked at my graduate work and I had a 3.946 in graduate work. And I thought to myself, I wasn't any smarter. No, I wasn't. I was the same as my choices that I made in undergrad were different than the choices I made. And so that leads, to negative consequences if you don't take care of business. I thought I was smarter than professors, and clearly I wasn't an undergraduate. And then maybe in graduate school, I played, the role a little bit better and played along, but no lack of intelligence.
What can I throw this at you? Do you think it may be, by the time you're in graduate school, you know what your passion is, and you know that the courses that you're taking are going to be geared directly towards your passion, where as a freshman or a sophomore, oftentimes even as a senior, kids are still trying to figure out, where do I fit in this world, and what's going to be my path for success. If
you look at my transcript undergraduate wise, the classes I struggle in then are the classes that kids struggle in right now, whether it's A&M or Texas. It's those gateway courses, your first semester English and math and business analysis and government. It's the same classes 30 years later, so they haven't changed, right? So maybe it's not the kids, maybe it's the system. But if you look at the transcript, when I moved into political science, I didn't make below a B because I liked those courses, and that's something that interested me. So yeah, it makes sense, but there are a little bit of life choices
Oh, I'm sure.
that get in the way there.
I'm not going to
Northgate and stuff like that.
I'm not the Dixie Chicken, maybe.
No, I was not Dixie Chicken type. I was a kind of a rocker guy. So
okay.
Dudley's Draw was the place for me.
So yeah, I'm not going to dig too deep into your history or your choices. But in your experience as a student, what do you wish was done differently, right, at the K-12 and at the college level?
I think people needed to understand my story, just like we need to understand kids' stories.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had a story. You talk about my family. My father had a lot of issues growing up, and it led to issues in the home. But I think if you looked at me from the outside, you were like, well, that's a private school kid. He has no crisis,
right.
No trauma going on.
All the advantages.
Yeah. And so I think that happens to a lot of kids in the system. And I think people just don't take the time to talk to each other and get to understand. Yeah. It's like politics right now. It's like I grew up in the 80s and people used to disagree with each other a lot.
Yeah.
And argue
talk about it normally.
Debate,
yeah.
And then at the end of the day, they'd go have a beer.
Yeah.
And it was all good. But now it's just about who yells at each other the loudest.
Yeah.
And then there's just a lot of bitterness in the world. And so just understanding our stories, and we all have a story. And that's just it. That's it. Just understanding where I come from or where anybody comes from, and then not judging.
We didn't have the same type of microscope, right, with social media and just the instantaneous news, 24-hour, all the things that could go wrong. If you say the wrong thing, if you do the wrong thing, if you make one mistake, it's magnified. So I do think that's a different component for our kids to deal with, right? Because if a kid makes one mistake, that mistake carries throughout their life, right? It's always there. And I think that's something we have to allow for and discuss and constantly talk about and reinforce with our classes and our teachers and our really our job lives too. Especially as superintendents. I mean, you got to be careful at times. That's why I love interviewing you, because you really don't have much of a filter. You kind of tell it how it is, and I've always respected that. And I know I'm going to get honest feedback and honest answers from you. Speaking of which, give me the blow-off class. Give me one blow-off class you took at A&M, the title of it. Do you remember what it was?
Well, it's the one that got me, business analysis, BANA.
Okay.
Called it BANA. I don't even know if it's still around, but, this dates me. We had to go around the mainframe. The mainframe was in the middle of the room, and all the computers were around.
It was like a Commodore 64 big mainframe.
Something like that. Yeah. So it's BANA was the blow off class, but it's the one that came back to bite me because I couldn't get myself out of an endless loop in programming.
Man, I feel worse now because I thought it was going to be something like mine was history of rock and roll. Right. And I think I took it.
See, I like social studies. I liked history. I wasn't really good in math. There was, the calculus class where I had a Russian teacher and a Chinese teacher's aide,
mm-hmm.
and I couldn't communicate with either of them
right.
very well.
And you struggled with
yeah.
Math was.
Math was. And it's not that I don't think I was, because I had a physics class that had a ton of math in it, but I could understand the professor.
Sure.
And, in one class I made an A, and the other class I made, not an A.
Well, they don't have Google Translate or all of the apps that you can do.
Yeah, D translates into whatever language. D is a D.
That's funny. So let me ask you a couple of questions to get to know you a little bit better and give the Rattlers a little bit of insight. So if we were going to go karaoke, what song would you choose?
Thin Lizzy, Simple Man.
You care to bust out a couple of? No. Okay.
No.
I do.
I do like Disturbed, Sound of Silence.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a little bit.
Disturbed.
Yeah. Okay.
Motley Crue, a little bit of Motley Crue.
Uh-huh.
Some of their stuff. AC/DC.
Yeah.
I said I was a rocker, so.
Yeah. I can see that.
Rush.
Man. Okay. All right.
Not into the new stuff.
No.
Not so much.
You can't do it?
I can even do probably Styx, Mr. Roboto.
So at the homecoming dance, you're not out there going to be mixing it up.
No, I'll just be shaking my leg on one side of the.
That's because they're falling asleep.
Yeah.
We're getting older, so our dance moves are a little bit needed some WD-40 on the knees and stuff. Would you rather have a national championship for the Aggies football team or courtside seats, Game 7 of the Spurs? They win, and you get to hand out the MVP trophy.
Aggie national championship.
Really? You got to tell me why.
Well, I was at the infamous Spurs game when the Popovich turned off the air conditioner. Miami Heat.
Yes,
it's just a joke, people. He didn't really turn it off.
Well, Barkley thinks he really did.
Yeah, he really does think that. But, so I mean, I've gotten to see several of their championships or witness and be at the parade. But I think A&M. I mean, it's a story for me. I mean, my undergraduate and my doctoral work are from there, so I bleed maroon, and I disagree with some of the stuff they do and some of their political stances. But it was a good university for me. Somebody there saw something in me and accepted me, and so I'm pretty loyal to A&M.
Speaking of colleges, what do you think? What can we do, our role and then a university role, to make that a more cohesive experience for kids? I always feel like there's a divide, right? Because immediately it's hands off when they get to even community college. But I think we've learned that it's still incumbent on us that kids learn, right? So even if they're sitting in a classroom at a university or online or what have you, I feel like there's not so much of to make sure they learn, right? They come to us and it's our job. It feels like it's all on the kids 100% once they get to college. And I think there's got to be some middle ground there where our universities are working with us and we're looking holistically at curriculum.
It depends on the university. I know we have Texas State here and we have some really good partnerships with them, but it's like with any university, I think we're siloed from each other. I don't think it's encouraged. We have the Gear Up program, which will follow the student 1 year after graduation. So whatever their path is, so career technology or college. So we'll see how that works because their first cohort is a junior. So if we do what I think those people are really capable of doing, is some wonderful Gear Up coordinators. They're going to, I think, help bridge that gap with colleges and universities and making sure that the kid's taken care of. I think typically what happens is you graduate and then the colleges think you're fine. And then the education system thinks you're fine. And I think there does need to be some kind of transitional point where we're checking in on kids and universities work closer with us and identifying the right pathways for kids or the right universities, college matching. I'm a big believer in college matching. And I think that the student will do better. I think programs like Avid, you're seeing some universities pick up the Avid strategies because I mentioned this many times before. Time management and choices, can come back and bite students. And it's not that they're not intelligent. They just make a poor choice or something happens, and then nobody says, "Hey, let's keep you in the system."
Right. Does it make sense for us to really engage businesses? And what I mean by that is because ultimately we're trying to help kids find their passion and educate them. And so is the university system, right? To do the same thing so that when they step out, they're productive. And business really should be driving all of that, right? Because where are their opportunities and what skills do they need? And yes, they need more of this and less of this. But I feel like it's kind of the universities like, well, their freshmen aren't prepared. And then when they get in the workforce, the businesses were like, I don't have a workforce. So wouldn't it make sense for our businesses to help drive how we do curriculum and what we do with instruction all the way through K through 16? How do we do that? I mean, because they're the ones with the jobs and the opportunities for our kids.
Yes. I think Baylor College of Medicine in Houston is one of those schools where, Baylor took full ownership of the curriculum.
That's it.
6 through 8, their doctors wrote the curriculum. They guided the educational professionals, and look at, think a few years ago, that program was the #1 magnet program in America. Pretty diverse system, kids from all backgrounds and all levels. But yeah, I think the businesses need to help us design. You see some of it, design the curriculum, but you see some of it like Texas State, their engineering program put what I call career technology internships into it.
Okay.
Which is funny because I was telling the professor, like, oh, so you made yourself like high school.
Pretty
because
much.
Samsung and some of the others were saying they can't manage projects. These kids can't finish. Right. And so I do think that they need to get involved. Again, it's going to be the politicians they have to get involved with because they have to change the policy. One, they have to make the policy fluid. Because there's lagging stuff that happens. And until the businesses say like, hey, enough's enough, we're going to continue having this kind of cycle where we're running behind in getting kids prepared for whatever they want to do.
Any other things that you want to hit on for the district? Any other big pieces of innovation that you're considering or that you see, maybe this might be on the horizon for San Marcos?
I think we're pretty progressive district as far as technologies. We use iPads at the younger grade levels, Google in the middle, and then laptops, at the high school with, different types of technology that kids are getting to experience, drones and all that stuff that we never, cyber patriots, like stuff that I've never would have thought would be in high schools. My only thing as a superintendent is I think we need to get off social media and get off the gaming right now. I think you mentioned it earlier that this stuff is really distracting right now. And I think we need to go back to some of the basics because the technology, the TikTok or whatever those things are, it gets in these kids' lives and it gets in their way. And it can either be really positive for them or it can be really negative based on one interaction. And so, that's my message to the community is like, there needs to be a fine balance between kind of old school and new school technologies. And we as a district, I think, really are moving towards blended learning, personalized learning, and understanding like the other stuff is going to take care of itself.
Sure. If once kids have choice and teachers understand each individual need, then you got the magic. So what would it take for you to get a purple Rattler tattoo? What would need to happen in the district? What could the kids do, the community do for you to get a purple Rattler?
Purple Rattler tattoo?
Yes.
Well, I have tattoos.
But I
don't know. You don't know whether I have a Rattler purple tattoo or not already.
I got to ask the high school kids to come up with something and get you.
If they were to win a state championship.
In what?
Any sport.
Any sport? What about
Even
UIL?
academic UIL.
Any state championship.
We've had it before. We had speech debate.
Okay.
We had UIL speech debate champions. So it's not unattainable. If we were to get any UIL sanctioned activity, I would include cheerleading in that.
Okay. And I
would get a Rattler tattooed on a body. Yeah.
And it has to be visible. Like it can't be one of these numbers.
On my calf. It'd be visible on my calf.
You heard it here first.
That's right.
High school students right there. Any state championship.
Any state championship.
Man, I was thinking you were going to
Rattler up. I'll Rattler up.
100% graduation rate. 10 kids accepted to Harvard, something like that. But UIL
10 kids accepted to Harvard might do it.
Yeah. Next time we come visit you, want to see if your kids get involved and maybe your audiovisual kids and come check out the.
Oh, you've never seen our studio? We have a television studio.
Do you really?
Yes, full green screen.
Well,
yes.
I can act a little bit.
Yeah, we can get in there. Got a podium.
Okay. Maybe the second semester.
Yes.
Maybe the second semester we'll come over.
They just finally put all the technology into it like a month ago. Yeah. So we're learning, but it's a fabulous facility.
For those listening at home, Dr. Terry Grier, former HISD superintendent and mentor to Michael and I, we've got a number of stories about him, but Michael tells them the best. So I'm gonna turn it over. Do you want to do it in Dr. Grier's voice as well?
I can try.
Okay.
It's hard to do his voice.
So Dr. Grier, this is for you when you see this on social media.
So I'll stick to sports.
Okay.
So Dr. Grier and I would play golf typically every Sunday. It's a mentoring session, is what I would take it as.
Sure.
But, if you're a golfer, there's par. And usually it goes something like this. We play golf hole. And I say this with all love.
I'm sure.
Dr. Grier would lose a couple of golf balls into the creeks or hitting out of bounds. Say it's a par 5 and we'd finish the hole. It'd be, Dr. Grier, how'd you do? Well, I got a par. And in my mind, I was thinking, you lost 2 golf balls on that hole. How'd you get a par? Well, again, he was mentoring me, so learned very quickly not to challenge the superintendent. Wrote the 5 down on the scorecard. Those are some of the stories.
Yeah, I know we have some other ones.
The main story is usually around students' education.
Absolutely.
There was a fixation, an obsession, I would say, on him wanting to ensure that 100% of our students out of the 215,000 were taken care of.
Absolutely.
And the questions would always go something like this: Mike, how's it going today? Great, sir. It's going great. Can you tell me what's going on at X middle school? And if you didn't know what was going on in X middle school, Mike, you think you might want to find out about what's going on? But if you knew, then he knew that you were taking care of kids and we were trying to get 100% towards graduation rate.
Absolutely.
And to being college ready. So there was the knowledge that I think across the system, it was always about the kids.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I've always admired and remember. He didn't want any excuses. If kids weren't doing well, it didn't matter what the reason or the finances or whatever the barrier. He did not believe that was a reason kids could not be educated to the highest level. And I've always admired and respected and tried to emulate that because he made things happen that a lot of people couldn't make happen. We do have a lot of stories that we'll not share on the air, but I just wanted to throw that out there. He's good, really good guy.
He is. Answer his phone whenever he calls.
Yes, he does. Yes, I know.
Answer the phone.
I've been told.
Yes.
Yes. Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for being a guest. And we're going to see you in the spring. And I'm going to take you up. We're going to go jump on the green screen. And will you do some karaoke if we get on the green screen? The kids.
I might do some dancing. I got some good kids if you want to interview some really good kids.
We can maybe we do kind of a combination where we get some of your AV kids and have them as a part of the setup in the interview.
I think in the spring it'd be nice to talk to some of our seniors.
Yep.
I know a couple that are going to UT and to A&M that have been with us the entire K-12s, and they would have some good stories, I think. I have one young lady who's only been with us for 2 years, very passionate about her dyslexia, but she's going to play volleyball at Texas State on a full scholarship.
Awesome.
And she might be somebody to interview because she has a great story around how athletics helped her overcome her dyslexia.
Absolutely. We'll take you up on that. Thank you for being here. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.
And we'll see you next time on The Path Forward.
That's right. Rattler up.
Rattler up.